Hello and welcome to the program. Ukraine has made its choice. On July 21st, Ukrainians voted for its new parliament. So far, preliminary results showed the Servant of the People party on course to win the first ever single-party majority in the Verkhovna Rada since Ukraine gained independence in 1991. The opposition platform for life ranks second, being followed by European Solidarity, Batkivshchyna and Holos. To discuss it, we're joined in the studio today by Maksym Panchenko. He's analyst at Internews Ukraine and UkraineWorld. Hello and thank you for coming.
Thank you.
So first question, let's discuss the new trends which occurred during the snap parliamentary election campaign. These elections reconfirmed Zelenskiy's popularity. How do you explain it?
Well, first of all, when we speak about trends that Ukrainians have seen during these elections, not every trend is new. In fact, one trend is very, common for Ukraine because it consists in the fact that oligarchs control Ukrainian media, primarily Ukrainian TV channels, and that's why during this electoral campaign and during elections we have seen the exact same battle between different channels fighting for their candidates and against other candidates. At the request of their owners. So this is the trend that has been kept from previous rounds, from previous elections Ukraine had. However, a very new trend for Ukraine, at least, has been the so-called infotainment effect. Well, it essentially consists in the fact that information, the serious information, is mixed. There is a fusion with virtual reality, with TV shows, and so on and so on. And of course, this is the trend that has been used mostly by the victorious party, because there has been a TV show called The Servant of the People, which is also the name of the party. And so the lines between the reality and...
It's blurred, let's say.
These lines are very blurred. But I think they have played in the hand of the party very well, because we can see the results, so that worked. Anyway, and the third trend is that parties are going incrementally digital. They are not every party, but mostly they shift from traditional media to social media, and again that has played into the hands of the servant of the people the most, because parties like Batkivshchyna, Fatherland, or European Solidarity did not benefit that much from this particular trend, but generally this is something that has been building on.
Now, the idea of lines being blurred between reality and fiction is quite interesting here. It's not the first time. It's a global trend, as you said.
Yeah, sure.
Trump as a former host of a reality show. Now, would you say that kind of line blurred and the expectation that people might have towards the series, will it help Zelensky at the end of the day, or will it cripple him into his program? Because reality, of course, is not exactly like in a series.
Yes. Well, I think that now that the elections are already behind us, it is more of a risk than an opportunity. It has been an opportunity so far. But now Zelensky and his party have to live up to the expectations, because so far these blurred lines have worked as a kind of populism on the part of Zelensky and his party. And now he has to show enough strength, enough political will, enough resources to implement everything he has promised to Ukrainian people. And then we'll see if it worked out and if people are going to get what they're expected to.
Now, the fact that his party is now the first at the parliament, he does have this kind of a hyper-presidency, and some critic might say that there is some sort of concentration of power. What are the pros and the cons of this situation where he's basically has control more or less virtually on the parliament and also on his presidency?
Well, the pro is kind of obvious, because now that he has such a broad support of the parliament, or potentially has it, he will be able to implement everything he has promised. He will have no more excuses why he cannot implement all those things, because now the support is more than sufficient. Well, experts say that a great con of this situation is that Zelensky may enjoy too much power, he may concentrate too much power in his hands, but I like it to see in a kind of a different way. If we look at the United States, we can see that there are only two parties, and every president wants like one party, his party, to have a majority in the Congress to support him, and that happens. And nobody calls him, a usurpator. Nobody says that he has all the power in his hands, and nobody says that he's an authoritarian leader. That is why I think nobody has to like to go crazy about this risk, but there is a risk, that's true.
Now, we had yesterday Paul Nyland here, who was explaining to us that the idea of also having that kind of power could also reverse the critic that Mr. Zelenskiy is the puppet of Kolomoisky. What's your stance on that? Does the fact that he has that kind of power could basically reverse the critic and say, like, okay, I'm more independent than people would think about me?
Well, I think we'll have to wait for certain steps, for certain developments that are going or not going to take place, because so far there are no solid things, solid evidence to prove that he is or not attached to Mr. Kolomoisky. I think we'll see, we'll see how the case of Privatbank is going to develop, and the media trends. Again, Zelensky promised that oligarchs should not have that much impact on media, so we'll see how much of the priority that will be on his agenda, and we'll be able to judge from that about how much Kolomoisky has an impact on Zelensky.
Now, you talked about media trend. That's quite interesting, because I'm going to talk about Viktor Medvedchuk here,
Yes.
who's Putin's, let's say, best ally in Ukraine these days. He showed relatively strong results with his party Opposition Platform for Life. Now, this success can be explained by his active media expansion. He relies on the popular channel 112, News 1, Zik, and there were this non-stop flows of news and talk. Which is it possible to reverse that trend, or how is it possible to reverse that trend and to let's say kind of cripple the power of oligarchs in that matter?
Well, that's a very complicated question, because the major result that everybody should have been afraid of has already been achieved by this party and by Medvedchuk himself, because now that there are specific figures on the outcome of the elections, well, we're going to have that representation for the next 5 years in the parliament, so hardly anything can be done about that. But at the same time, I think that the general rhetoric in Ukraine, the prevailing rhetoric, is anti-Medvedchuk, and I think that there are not really so many things he can do alone in the parliament, because for now it seems like every other party is willing to distance itself from Medvedchuk, so he's not going to have any strong allies in the parliament, or not any at all. Potentially. So I don't think they may be vociferous, they may have their audience, they may have their, rhetoric, but I don't think that they can do as much as they can speak.
So paradoxically, you'd say that the parliamentary system will prevent any expansion of the power of the opposition platform.
Hopefully so. Hopefully so.
Now, let's talk a little bit about social media, as you said at the beginning of the interview.
Yes, sure.
That Mr. Zelensky also kind of surfed on this wave of social media. Most of his campaign went through social media. In order to understand what's happening in Facebook, Internews Ukraine and Siglarex analyzed the 3 most popular social networks in Ukraine. Now, can you tell us more about the research and what the outcome of this research concerning May to June 17, 2019?
Yes, that's true. One of the major conclusions that we have come to is that every social media is a different pair of shoes. And for instance, if we look at the Instagram, which is, I think, the most swiftly developing social media in Ukraine, we'll see that Zelensky enjoyed the unrivaled attention there. From among the posts that have been dedicated to the general topic of elections in Ukraine, 82% of posts were dedicated to Zelensky, and only 17 or something, and this is the second best result, was dedicated to Poroshenko and his team. An interesting thing about Instagram is also that Zelensky tried to attract the attention of the fans of the Kvartal 95, of his TV media company that products different TV shows, different films, and he tried to, he used the hashtags of that TV company, so he was trying to pull those people to his presidential campaign and then to the parliamentary campaign. If we speak about Vkontakte, the Russian-based social media, there is a very interesting thing about this social media, because one would expect that, given that it is Russian and with pro-Russian rhetoric, it would defend pro-Russian candidates. But in fact, the rhetoric in Vkontakte proves that Russian people and this social network in general just hates everybody in Ukraine. Every party, even though
it's just a general trend.
Yes,
yeah.
and towards Medvedchuk and towards everybody. So that's a very interesting and I would say unforeseen outcome of our research, because that was very unexpected. And I think the most interesting topic in this sense is Facebook, because the very algorithm according to which Facebook is operating suggests that everybody has equal platform for being presented online on Facebook, and that is why one would expect that everybody had his or her voice spoken and everything like that. But in fact it worked out a little bit differently. This algorithm added up to the fact that some like information bubbles have been created, and different echo chambers have been created, so to say.
People with the same opinion tend to act with the same people with the same opinion.
It seems like a situation where everybody finds himself or herself in the surrounding of his own company, and he thinks that he's the one who's going to win at this election, or his sympathizers. So, but actually it does not work that way. But also it added up to the level of polarization in Facebook, because these comfort zones that have been created online on Facebook, they have added up to how much different factions hate each other. So that's true, that added up enormously to that.
Now, would you say, just more generally speaking, that we can one day imagine some campaign which could be purely and only on social media, without the flyers, without the billboards, without anything else, kind of a cheap way of campaigning here?
I think yes. One day we can speak about that. I think we have to wait for maybe a decade or two when because the older generation, maybe like not even just older, the 40, 50 plus nowadays do not use social media.
Born with
yes,
yeah.
but once we are more grown up and add a decade or two, and I think everything will be online.
Now, speaking after, just to come back to the parliamentary structure here. Speaking after the results were announced, Zelenskiy said he would welcome coalition talks with Vakarchuk's reformed Focus party. Now, he rejected the idea of Poroshenko's party joining a potential coalition. What are your thoughts about this move and this declaration?
Well, I think first of all, it is no wonder that Zelenskiy does not want to have his coalition with Poroshenko for several reasons. First of all, he was his primary rival at the presidential elections. And second, Zelenskiy built all of his rhetoric back at the presidential campaign based on the idea that he is a new face and Poroshenko is an old face and a corrupt face. That is why I don't think this will be a very good sign on the part of Zelenskiy to anyhow associate himself with Poroshenko or anybody from the old guard. When it comes to Holos, to Sviatoslav Vakarchuk, I think, well, technically Zelensky does not seem to need that coalition, but I think that he will push for it anyway, because that way, trust invested in him by the Ukrainian people will only be more, by 6-7% more, but still I think that is kind of significant, So I think that that is a very plausible scenario, that these two political parties will join their forces.
Which is quite interesting, because you talked about new faces and the idea of infotainment and blurred line between realities. It would be unprecedented to have a former actor and a rock star basically holding a coalition in a way.
Well, he still is a new face. I mean, like, of course, he has been to the parliament for a year or so, but that was not a very serious participation. He is not memorable for any faults, but not also for any wins, particularly. So I think, and we don't. Speaking about Holos, we don't have to pay attention specifically to him or only to him. We need to remember about people he is bringing to the parliament, because that list, in fact, is very qualitative. And those people are indeed professionals in the relative sectors, so I think that their expertise may be helpful anyway.
Now, and to conclude this interview, there's also the issue and the matter, let's say, of the Prime Minister. And so Zelensky told reporters he wanted to nominate a Prime Minister as a professional economist, who is respected in Ukraine and the West, and hasn't held the position of Speaker or led a party. Idea of new face again. Who could it be, according to you, potentially?
Yes, I understand that there have been some hints about who this can be, but I doubt that I can add up to it anyhow, because Zelenskyy and his team are sending very mixed signals about this. It seems like very often when they say something, they then disavow their statements, and apart from that, he has a so-called human resources hunger from the very beginning of his presidential campaign, not just now. So I don't think that it is possible to name anybody at this point without any information whatsoever.
Well, then we'll be closely follow up on that.
That's true.
Thank you very much for coming in the studio today to give your light on the matter. That was Maksym Panchenko, analyst at Internews Ukraine, UkraineWorld. Thank you for watching the program and stay tuned for the rest.